Welcome, everyone, to this episode. Mark and Melissa De Jesus in the house. Today, ready to bring you some insights that will hopefully help you in your healing and freedom, your healing and freedom journey. And we want to take the things we've learned and the insights that have helped our life and be able to share it with you and those we've been able to help. And if you are new to our channel or to our materials, the subject of the Father's love is a major area that we encourage people in, because when you're walking your healing and freedom journey and you're working through mental health issues, emotional stuff, healing of the past, you're trying to navigate relationships in a healthy way, you're working through marriage, working through parenting, you're trying to overcome addictions, you've got hang-ups that you're trying to figure out and work through. Everything leads back to letting our hearts get healed in the love of the Father and learning to actually work through the father wounds that we carry. So this is a big aspect of what we talk about, what we teach, and what we want to recommend for your healing journey.
Right.
And these are, you and I have both had various areas of this that we've had to address. Same issue.
Illuminated too, yes.
Yeah, being illuminated too. And I think that for everybody in their journey, we can talk about this subject till we're blue in the face, but everyone has to come to a recognition of the need for healing father wounds. And we can tell you till you're blue in the face, till we're blue in the face, maybe even until you're blue in the face.
We've learned not to do that anymore. We did that. We don't do that anymore.
So this brings up right off the jump, I think an important aspect of this that you're alluding to is that when it comes to working through issues, the problem is not the problem. Whatever you struggle with is going back to a love issue. It's going back to being rooted in love. And God is a father. And we all have to come to the place of recognizing our need for it. We can't convince you of it. We can't tell you. We could tell you over and over again. You have to come to the realization. I had to come to the realization because, to be honest, I just covered it over, dismissed it. Just pushed it away.
Right.
Wasn't something I was like comfortable with realizing. And it took me hitting my head against the wall a number of times. And I've got a pretty hard head, so I can hit walls a lot of times to then come to a place of realizing I need a greater revelation of who God is as Father. And it brings out the father wounds in our life.
What do you think was the number one reason you didn't want to go there? Like guilt about your dad, guilt of what do you think was the number one thing preventing you from like seeing it in a higher way? A
life of denial.
Okay.
Now, I wasn't consciously going, I'm going to deny this subject. I would just find ways to dodge around those uncomfortable conversations about certain emotions, vulnerability, because most people deal with their father wounds by performing to some degree in life. That could be achievement. It could be just chronic busyness, just doing.
Right.
And that,
or even conforming to how the family wants you to be is performance.
Right. And then that can lead into like the perfectionism tie-in, which is like, got to make sure things are just right. Got to do things just right. Get my thoughts just right. Present myself just right. And then you add the religious world of faith, and it's a bad mixture because now you're interacting in that way. So my focus was on like the metrics of church ministry, right? Then you notice like, I ain't doing so good.
Right.
Like this beep, beep. And it's like kind of,
can't really pull it together.
Chaos.
You start to recognize the chaos inside. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was when the anxiety was epic that I came to the point of realizing, okay, I need help. I need help. I don't mean like, I need help, let me go see a counselor for one session. It was like, I need help because the way I'm doing life needs
like an overhaul kind of help.
So it opened me up to what I need. And that's, I did a talk this week about, the gospel. Do we really need it? Because I'm talking about like Jesus is bringing the gospel, and he says, I'm come to heal your broken heart, which that's the next part I'm going to talk about in the series. But before he says that, he says, I'm bringing the gospel to the poor. Why doesn't he say, I'm bringing the gospel to all mankind? Right? Now, we go poor on people that are broke. Now, I'm not going to get into that talk. It's there. You can watch it. But my point is that poor is a recognition of what you don't have.
It's an inner.
That you need.
Right.
And I realized I need the love of the Father. And I live in generational lack of the Father's presence, the Father's love, the Father's emotions. I live in like most people, a generational reproduction of a father model that needs healing and needs change. And one day I come to this awareness of like, how did I grow up in church and not have in my heart a connection to the love of the Father? This is not cool.
Yeah.
And so then it led me to the discovery of like, okay, the New Testament scriptures are covered with the Father's heart. And it's like a topic maybe once every 3 years. When Jesus was like nonstop, like, you see me, you see the Father. What I do, I say the Father says, the Father does, the Father, 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 Father. The apostles echo that kind of language. And then we are children of God. And it's like, why isn't this? And I realize it's not a theology issue. It's an uncomfortability issue.
Yeah.
Because if pastors, teachers, people really dig into this, they have to deal with their uncomfortable, right? And for many, it's like, well, if I talk about father wounds, I'm disrespecting my father. We go black and white.
Or it makes them look at who they are as a father. Pastors is what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. It looks at everything.
Right.
Right? It's awkward. Makes us look at who we are. But I think it brought me back to like sonship. Like I don't know how to be a loved son before my Father in heaven. And yeah, it's awkward. So this subject we're bringing about healing father wounds, there's like a first level of awkwardness that we have to go through of like, what does it mean to be okay with this?
Right. It's making me think of the song "A Good Father," and I think about that being sung in so many churches. It's such an amazing song. But there is a part that I do think a lot of people, when you're in worship, you perform and I'm doing this, I'm feeling it. And do we really know?
It's interesting that the song "Good, Good Father" rode through the church like a heavy wave, but I don't think we got the signal.
I know, such a good song.
It's swept through as a good hook, a nice song. I don't think we got the signal. No, this is what you need.
This is where you got to stay.
I found in my one-on-one work with people, that song actually was disturbing to them.
Really?
Yeah. You get into this and it's like the song goes, "You are perfect in all of your ways."
Right.
And they're like, "No, what about this that happened in my life? What about this that happened in my life?" Right?
Because then you question, well, would a good father let me go through this? Would a good father let me, right?
All the distortions rise to the surface, right? Because we're like, and so those areas are like, those are the things God needs to heal. But we don't do that. We just hold it, and we hold our story to God, and we don't realize, the image of how we see God needs healing.
Right, which is going back to your original point of how did your father help you through tough times?
That's right.
On earth. You will go through tough times.
Yeah. our battlegrounds, and I see this across the board. Hold on, I got a good sneeze. Our battlegrounds in our relationship with God mirror our relationship with our earthly father. And either in how he acted or in how he did not equip you.
Right.
So I think in today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to move into some arenas to help people ask some questions that could begin to navigate this. There's many people that are, they're on their treadmill, they're driving in their car, they're in various places, taking this in either in video or listening to it in audio. And I thought, when we really talk about healing father wounds, we have to first go look at our relationship with God and where do we struggle? And I think that's the place to reveal where our earthly relationship, our earthly father, there are gaps, there are wounds, because God designed your earthly father to be a model. He's not perfect, but to give you a model so that you'd understand how to relate to a perfect father. And so why would God make fathers and call himself a father, right? Because he set up this pathway of learning in our lives. So when you look at your battles that you struggle with, whatever it is, anger, addictions, fear, anxiety, bipolar, OCD, anxiety, depression, we follow the trail. Right. Remember, the problem is not the problem. We want to get more to like the root system. It goes back to the issue of, what does father mean to you? How do you connect to who God is as a father? How do you navigate that? And so then it creates self-awareness. Self-awareness is an ability to understand how things affect you and what emotions are going on, help you to look, in a deeper sense. We could use the biblical word discernment, of like having a discernment over your life. Mm-hmm. And I think the ability to go, okay, I need this in my life. I humble myself. I recognize I need this aspect of God's heart for my healing journey. And then that right there is really what you need. You could stop it right there, and the rest that we're going to talk about today will just come to you. It will.
Right. You're not wrong.
When you humble yourself, what you need will arrive to you. When you're like teachable. And for my OCD listeners, they become obsessed about a subject. Yeah. You got to humble yourself and begin to realize that's not the problem. Whatever you spin about, it's not the problem. It's about what it means to be rooted and established in love. Right. And God's a father.
Right.
Does that make sense so far?
Yes, every second of it. Mm-hmm.
So I think the place that I would recommend is like when we navigate father questions. I'm going to give you some father questions to start with. Is going, okay, Mark. All right, I hear you out. Mr. Mark, Mr. Brother from another mother. Mm-hmm. What started off for me was, what is a good father? Like taking that question and applying it to like real life, real world. What does it look like to be a good father? Because a lot of our hangups, we put something on what we think God should be. It's not really what a good father is. Mm-hmm. Right? Like sometimes if God was loving, why would he? So then we equate, okay, so God is someone who rescues you out of all your problems and you never have to face anything. You never have to deal with anything, right? It's like, okay, we've created this image that's not accurate. But wait, a father's with us. A father communicates love. A father equips us, right? So a father doesn't come and go. A father is affirming, validating. A father is safe to be around. You get excited to be around your dad.
Well, yeah, you're supposed to.
Right. So that's kind of the question to start with.
I think, what's interesting, just as you even saying, what is a good father? I do think that people don't know how to answer that. So even as you're like saying the things you were just saying, I don't think a lot of people know how to even express that. So I think people could get stuck on that question.
For sure.
What is a good father? Because I think even in asking that, it provokes the like, you instantly look at your own dad.
Right. Which you should,
but that's not really the question though. Right.
Right.
You can maybe find some good things, but I do think that can be hard. And I think it's good that we're kind of, even in doing this podcast, we want to kind of raise the emotional language in people's minds of how you're even looking at things.
That's right.
Even the word equipping. Like I was really dumb to that word for so long. Then in us saying it, like there's a lot in that word.
For sure. Big time. Big time. So I appreciate you saying that, because it's like, yeah, we're looking at what an effective father relationship looks like. And I think we don't realize how emotionally checked out many fathers are.
Right. Which then made us emotionally dumb too.
Yeah.
So even the question's a stretch. I'm just saying for some people it is.
Like, emotionally, like maybe not using the word emotionally dumb. Well, more like ill-equipped.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Of like not having the capacity to identify emotions and work through emotions.
Because I think most people would answer the question in a very basic way. My dad worked hard. He came home. We had family dinner. I think the majority, well, I shouldn't say the majority, but I think a lot of people just really accepted, because they're going to look at their dad first. I'm coming from that question. Yeah, they work hard. I knew he loved me. He never said it, but I knew it. Right. We had a good home. We had, you know what I'm saying? We need to kind of like go deeper.
That's the washing over.
Right.
It's a washing over. Yeah.
I just want to bring out that point. So.
Yeah, he never said he loved me, but I knew it. No, that's not how love works. Love is not a thing that we hope you figure it out someday and assume it. No. And some people say, well, my dad told me he loved me a few times. Well, most people recognize their father didn't even tell them they loved him. Then there's those who say, oh, he did, but
it was the one time I saw him cry, and
right. Or he was drunk and he said that he loved all of us, and so we that's our first instinct, is to kind of wash over it. We don't really recognize. Now, your dad sets you up to relate to God.
You know, it's
like that's a big
100%.
That's a big responsibility.
Yeah. You know what? This question is even making me think about, a lot of the beginning of our ministry was based on like understanding the father's love and the mother's love. And we would pray that over people a lot. And it was very interesting to me in what you would consider the little things of when we would speak over people. And we had those moments where I'll even use it, for instance, like saying to a woman about her mom, I'm sorry, I didn't ever brush your hair. Right?
I remember that.
Teaching you the things of care. And so when I think of the father, in the things I've come to understand too of, a good father notices you. A good father notices when you walk through the door.
That's right.
A good father notices you're in pain and goes, a good father's a watchman over the home, notices their child is hurting, notices the wife is hurting.
Right.
We don't instinctively, I'm bringing that up because we don't instinctively think of that. We just have never encountered it.
I think the standard of what a father should be is so low.
Like so low.
He was in the room.
I've even heard people, right.
He's in the room. He was there.
Right. I've even heard people say, like single moms whose dads are out of the picture of the kids. Well, he was good. He always paid his child support.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I think there's this battle of like, if I admit this, then I'm saying he's a bad father. We kind of go black and white. It's like either he's amazing. I know I had a good father, or he's terrible. No, those are not the only two options.
Right.
This is a mixture that we can appreciate the good, but there are a lot of flaws. And I feel the standard for what a father is
so low. The bar is like on the dirt, crawling on the belly.
You're right. And in many ways, we're raising the standard of the importance of a father. I'm quite frustrated personally because the father is just ignored. It's ignored in church. It's ignored in culture. It's ignored in society. It's ignored in all the problems we have. Most of the problems people are facing need a dad, period.
100%. And I think it's become societally acceptable. Oh, that's just what men do. They just ditch out.
Yeah.
We've come to a point where we've accepted this.
Right. It's true. So we're, in one way, bringing this subject and raising the power of what God can do through a father's heart. And in that journey, we recognize, there's some stuff that's missing. And if you're wanting to know, okay, what are the things that are important from a father? Well, we'll kind of go further. Was he a safe and empowering spiritual leader in the home? And for most people, most Christians, if they had both parents at home, a lot of times it's the
mother, right,
that did the prayer, did the devotions.
Get everybody for church, right?
Let's go to church, either getting ready for church or even going to church.
Right.
getting the kids involved in spiritual activities and things like that. And so it's kind of like, okay, the man, you just go and you work. That's your identity. Go work. And it's not
provide.
And it's not his identity. You know, a dad's identity is not provider. It's part of the journey, but it's really about being a spiritual leader. And then people even like, you know, don't know how to process that because they think a spiritual leader means like somebody who's harsh and a dictator.
I was just going to say that we could park and do an episode on spiritual leadership.
Yeah. And it's so it goes back to the reference. These our references are what need healing.
Our references have all been hijacked.
Yeah. Father, brother, sister, mother, pastor, church. You know, like all these references like stirs up people's brokenness, right? And then we act out of that brokenness. So did he communicate and express love on a daily basis to create safety in the household? Did he tell you that you were loved? Did he demonstrate love to your mother? Was he a different person at home than when he was at work? Because that's real easy. Be the shining superstar at work, or if he's a pastor in ministry, or if he's a community leader, shines there. But then at home, you're like a different person, right? But did he like tell you on a regular basis, look at you, like you say, look at you in the eye, notice you, hear you when you're talking about something, not expressing that you're an inconvenience, that what you're going through is not, you're not too busy for it, right? Was he emotionally available to you? If you're going through something, countless people I sit with, you see these certain defining moments in their life, and they look to go to father, mother, and it doesn't go well. And it's like, oof, I better not bring this up again. And so for most mental health battles, for example, it goes back to a lot of what was the safety and love like for your life. Because when you're a young child, you're building your sense of safety. And when safety's not there, you're not as a 6-year-old going, this is not safe. You're reacting, coping. Correct. So it's not until you're 40 years old that you go, oh my goodness.
I can't get it together. My life's a mess.
What to even realize, I didn't feel safe at that time in my life. Right. Because you don't even know that's what you're supposed to be.
Well, I would think too.
Looking for.
It is easy to point out, well, I grew up in an abusive home. I grew up in this and my dad was awful. What is the subtle thing that I think the majority of the population struggles with is the neglect. Mm-hmm. It's that subtle neglect that you weren't acknowledged when you walked in a room. You weren't asked how you were doing. Again, back to all your needs were provided for. It's one of the most confusing kind of households to grow up in, where everything looks okay, but there's nothing going on emotionally. Yeah,
and I appreciate that in trauma language, they're talking a lot about what's called complex trauma.
Correct. I was going to say, I didn't know.
Which is a chronic culture of trauma and or neglect. And I think that's so important because complex trauma is the trauma of neglect. It's continually being in a place where things should be in place, but you're being neglected for a lot of reasons. And we're living in a culture that's manifesting a lot of that in our life, in our journey. So I'll go back to father. Mm-hmm. Did he tell you who you are? So we live today in a growing confusion over identity.
Massive.
Identity of male, female,
war over it, right?
Attraction, everything. So let's go back to, when did your father show you who you are as a man? When did your father show you who you are as a woman? You know, I'll let the silence sit for a moment.
For a second.
Right? So like, if I look back to when's the day I felt like a man, I'm not saying in a good way or bad way, just where that, like, I can go back to it.
You can.
Yeah, it was like, you better step up, buddy, because the pressure is on.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was 18 years old. I got hired by my church to step into a big position. Was beyond my years and experience. A great opportunity to pastor a youth ministry. But I can see, look right back. I look right back at those series of moments, intense transition, intense times, and it is, bro, you better step up. And I remember the voices that were around me at that time. Oh, you better fast and pray during this time. And I'm like,
you've got to take it serious.
And I remember I remember one person saying to me, oh, I bet you've been fasting like crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I am. I'm like, oh, I better go, because I'm like, I haven't, but I better be, So it's like pressure. I gotta be. That's not when you figure out you're a man. That's not when you awaken to that. So up until that point, it's just, so I lived in chronic adolescence personally.
Wow.
But not professionally. I'm a man. I can step up, I can do, but emotionally I'm in adolescence. And so we live in a society where people we're emotionally adolescents.
Yeah.
People tell me even in sessions,
stunted.
They say I'm stunted in that area. I don't know how to deal with emotion. Some people say inside,
so good.
inside I'm 5 years old. Right? Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to recognize that. I feel like I'm 60 years old and I feel like I'm 7. And it's like, well, that's probably very accurate. And it's probably showing you the marker of where things really didn't happen that you needed. We kind of throw out these numbers as though, we just made them up. And a lot of times there's meaning to it.
Right.
So
can I make a joke really quick? It's not really a joke, but it's back to what you were just saying about you getting your job at the church. Christians love to make life or death out of decisions.
Yeah.
Like you better make the right decision, boy. You better fast. You better pray. You better make the right decision. I think it all goes back to they regret all their decisions. So they're like, you better think about this because I regret all mine. Anyway,
true.
So it just made me think of that.
True. It's, you're joking, but it's also true because, Christians are obsessed with God's will.
Right.
We're obsessed with make sure you're in God's will. Oh, because you're out. Oh, get back in.
It's crazy how.
Right. You ever walk on ground that you easily slip? That's how we treat God's will. Oh, you're out of it. Get back in. Whoa, you're on a tightrope.
Gosh, we're so messed up.
We are. And
so back to your stunting.
Yeah. So
everybody's stunted.
So I had, for example, people know in my OCD material that I was relationally OCD. And that is a sign of relational immaturity. So, you kind of go through this, I like this person. Do I like them? Do I love them? Maybe I don't. Maybe it's God's will. Maybe it's not, this constant, I don't even call it double-minded. It was quadruple-minded. It was it was 4 minds at the same time, And so much of the distortions I talk about, the healing issues that I talk about, but really it's immaturity.
100%.
Emotionally immature.
You were not equipped.
Because that's not where the emphasis is. The emphasis is not how are you developed inward. People listening to this, the emphasis in the matrix we live in is not development of emotion, relationship. It is do well in your job. Be successful. Present something that looks good. That's where all the investment's put in. Think about our conversations. Hey, how's Frank doing? He's doing good. He's working so he's making good money. He's doing great.
You never hear parents braggadocious about, my son or my daughter. They're so loving and kind. I'm not talking about when they're 8. I'm talking about when they're adults. They are so loving to people. I'm so proud of their heart and how they interact with their spouse. You don't really hear that.
No. It's job.
Oh my gosh, my son got this great job. He works for this accounting firm. They just built this big, beautiful house. They got the 3 perfect kids and they all shop at Pottery Barn and they are Instagram ready.
They all shop at Pottery Barn.
And they have an awesome Instagram account and they look so amazing on it.
And I want to say, so how's Frank
what kind of person
doing?
Are they?
No, how's Frank doing? That you didn't answer any of that.
Right.
So where was I? So
I'm sorry. I like to add in my humor.
That was funny though. But I think, yeah. So what we value drives everything else, and we value good job, money, influence, how things look.
We don't value the state of the heart.
Right.
It's too messy for people. It's too scary. And it's scary because they themselves do not have the emotional language to help you. So instead of even having the awkward conversation and just pressing into it, they go, it's too hard. I can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah. Identity. That's what I was talking about. I just got my.
I derailed us way this way, but you know what? You got us back.
When I was talking about when you discover that you're a man.
Oh, right.
And so for females, like, when did you discover who you are as a female? Is it when somebody noticed?
I was just going to say when boys started noticing me.
Yeah, and when that happens, that's a terrible sign of recognizing, because a father has to instill, I see you, you're beautiful, I appreciate you, I like being with you, I notice you, all that.
You want to have, that is like the number one thing. If you are a father who has daughters and you are worried about your daughters picking the right men, or, how the saying of staying off the pole kind of thing, like, really respecting themselves. Institute that one thing. Notice them when they walk in the room. Notice them. That was my downfall. I've talked about it on the podcast many times before. When the first boy locked eyes with me, it was all over. That's what you do.
Right, because the locked eyes were not there from the beginning.
So they're going to find it somewhere.
Right. Because you have to remember, the father of lies wants to be your daddy.
Right.
He wants to infiltrate those areas. And if the earthly father doesn't set that precedent, the father of lies comes in.
Right.
And he usually brings in lust, all kinds of rejection, performance.
It's all the counterfeit of what it should really be, of affirmation and identity and love. Right.
So then you live for love. And so we live in a culture of Christianity. Christianity right now is striving to try to be good for God. Get my devotional life, my prayer life, make sure I think right, make sure everything's, I got to make sure because it's all like, when I do this, then he'll love me. Then I'll feel good. Then I'll feel at peace. And it's just a never ending cycle, because we don't know unconditional love.
No.
So the father has this power that God's given him to do this thing that we all chase. You chase it whether you admit it or not. This validation, this acceptance, approval. When you don't experience that from your father in your upbringing from early on, because validation, acceptance is not when you accomplish something. It's from the beginning, and I talk about that in my teachings on Jesus being baptized, that it's like that. And this is my beloved son who I'm well pleased, before ministry started. Like it happens first. It doesn't happen, oh, you did these things, so now I'm pleased with you. It's like, no, I'm happy with you right now. And
we often joke with Abby, because we're so aware of this, that when she finds her husband, she's going to come home the first day and go, hello, you're not talking to me when I walk into a room. My parents, when I walk into a room, light up.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
It'll be interesting
to
see
my
mom and dad,
what her journey.
Yell my name and cheer for me. No, we're not that extreme, but
so like that validation thing is everywhere.
Yeah,
that's what you're looking for. Looking to be validated. Looking to be like, to get that nod.
You're looking to be seen.
To get that nod from your dad.
Seen. Do you see me?
Mm-hmm.
Do you see my pain? Do you see my heart? Do you see what I'm struggling with? Do you see me?
Right.
Meaning what a good father does. He supports you. He's there for you.
And the biggest takeaway in discovery, because we're in discovery mode with you right now. That's what we're hoping our conversation, our tangents will hopefully lead.
Well, you should call them like the Missy tangents or something.
Well, did he equip you? That's the big thing.
Right.
Now, what do I mean by equipping? I appreciate you saying, like, what does that even mean? Equipping. So the way that we we equip people is not in a classroom. And that's one of the reasons why I've wanted this format continually through our ministry work, is you and I just having conversations, because we're used to like, okay, teaching 3 steps of this, 4 steps of this, right? Information. We want to get information in, which information's helpful, but it needs to lead to practice experience. The way a father relates is everything's done relationally. So even his instruction is done organically. You spend time together. Subjects pop up. You have conversations on that. You dive into it. Now, you're not going to do that as a dad if you're not working through stuff yourself as a son. So you won't reproduce that. So you'll just do activities, go to amusement parks, go on vacation, but never have those like meaningful conversations.
Right.
Because it takes practice and flow. So in that context, children start to discover, this is anxiety that I'm battling, and this is how I can work through it. Here's some things, and there's understanding, there's exchange. So look at whatever battle you're having currently. All of you listening, pause for a moment, put a name to it, whatever it is you're currently battling. What did your father do to help you navigate that subject? And it's either crickets, or he told you to get over.
Or they didn't know, because we didn't talk about anything.
Right. So what a lot of parents do is they go, we need to get you counseling. Okay. I'm not saying don't get counseling. What I'm saying is you just missed your power as parents.
Right. We keep removing ourselves as parents from the help.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know about this. I don't know about OCD, Mark, so I don't know how to. Well, I'm not more powerful than your voice.
Right. It's true.
Dad and mom. Sorry, I can never be more powerful than your presence and who you are. I don't care what any teenager says or how much they go, whatever, Dad.
Right.
Everybody in our hearts longs for the love and approval of mom and dad. We'll get into mom next time. We're narrowing in on dad right now. Mm-hmm. So when you recognize the equipping, it's Dad's set to set us up to be overcomers. He's not going to rescue you from all your problems. That's the tough part about being an effective parent, is you see, like, there's some storms in life. We've got our own that we're facing, and we're setting up our kids. We want to prepare them emotionally for it.
100%. I was literally just thinking that as you were saying, like, that's really one of the biggest.
Now, I wasn't prepared for it. So when I jumped into the world, the message that I heard was, you better get your act together.
You're not good enough. You're right.
Well, that's underneath it.
Right.
You're getting to the heart, real deep heart thing. That's man, I better show up. So every sermon, every meeting, everything has got to be. Now, here's the problem. A lot of that worked for me. I can show you metrics. Look at what Mark's doing. Youth group grows. This happens. I can run this. Impressive. Was never, ever asked, nor would I have probably even have listened if somebody said, hey, how are you doing emotionally? How are things going? How's the life of your heart? I don't even know that I would have listened.
And again, back to my original, you wouldn't really have even known how to answer that.
Correct.
Right.
I would have been like, good.
Everything's great.
I'm good. You good? I'm good.
You would have come back with the metrics. Everything's great. Ministry's great. Kids had all these kids show up on Sunday, Wednesday. We're doing great. Right.
That's right. So I think it's beginning to understand in your life, what did I not receive that was important? Many of you will say what things, many of you had abusive fathers, and you realize it was just overtly unsafe. But then many of you have very passive fathers that, it's a different form of abuse because it's neglect. It's he needs to step up and it didn't. So you're left to yourself. That's, in my opinion, one of the most challenging ones, because we're not aware of it. It's like, what do you mean? Like, people look at me like, what do you mean? I needed my dad. Wait, my dad died when I was 2, or my dad, my parents divorced. And so it doesn't even compute in their thinking.
Because you adjusted to survive.
That's right. That's right. So in the awareness, we start to now we're going back to healing father wounds. We're starting to be aware of what's the message I believed about myself that I carried that made me a performer, that made me look for love in the wrong places. And it's those things like you say, I'm not good enough. God is far from me. He doesn't care. Those
I'm
become
the problem.
Those become deep-rooted value systems that we listen to and live out of. And I think it's helpful for you to be aware of, what did I become to cope, to survive, to try to belong?
I'd say too, it can be interesting that once you leave your father, if your father's around, you have a relationship with him, and you leave, you pay attention to either how you're feeling after, maybe pay attention to, wait, what do I do when I'm around him?
That's a good point.
How do, those are little things that can help too sometimes if you're stuck.
Yeah, that's good. Is there anything you can share about what you became to feel safe and loved, to try to?
Oh gosh. I shouldn't say I never. There's so many things, but I think one big, you're saying how I coped with being around my dad. Never really confronting a lot of the problems and making, okay, actually, let me take a step back.
I think what I'm looking into is like, what did you have to become? Like if you're in a social situation,
sorry,
what
I'm
do
not
you,
answering it properly.
it's all right. What do you have to become to relate to the world around you? What kind of stuff do you have to carry to be accepted, to be loved, to be validated?
Wow. Well, I think that you can carry a lot of codependency. You take on a false personality just for, there's so much rejection. I think a big thing, and it's been obviously a huge theme of our ministry, is understanding the rejection wound. And I've often, I talk about it, like you have to, when you recognize that you have that, you got to look at how you even do your entire day.
Right.
Everything from the time you get up to the time you go to sleep. You have to look at how you interact with everything. Gosh, there's so many things. I think I could pick the kitchen sink.
Go for it.
Oh gosh.
Well, what's one that sticks out the most, that you find that rejection, that
during like my worst time, like my 20s.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was probably obsessive compulsive was the worst.
Right. Like I'm going to make sure.
I was so debilitated to make sure I was making the right decisions. I had no idea. And I've joked about this. It's been a long time. And you've done so many episodes on OCD. But I had it pretty severe with water and all kinds of things. But I joke that it was so bad that I didn't know, do I have peanut butter and jelly or jelly and peanut butter? That's how bad decision making for me, because I was given nothing in how to navigate life. So I hid from people because I was so insecure. I hid. Well, then when I would go, no, you need to get out there. You need to be around people. I had no idea who I was. So I would be the funny girl. So I would take on a personality.
Right.
To be the funny person, just to cope. Because I had no idea who the heck I was.
Right. Kind of assess the situation, kind of respond in a way of like, I want to be funny to try to meld in. But meanwhile, I'm avoiding the fact that I'm uncomfortable and I'm.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's funny, you even asking me now, I feel like that my journey's been so interesting, but you even asking me was an interesting thing to kind of go, okay, access that time. Not that I've forgotten about it, because I haven't, but
it can be tough.
It seems so long ago too.
Well, it's tough.
It's been a long journey of each phase of what it's looking like.
Yeah, they're
in healing.
Yeah. They're tender.
But I would say, like, I picked the 20s because that was probably like the worst time of my life. So what about for you? Is it more just that performance in the metrics?
Well, religious perfectionism. and we've had talks about this where like when we first came together and I started talking about perfectionism, you associated perfectionism as an achievement,
right,
kind of thing. And then you started to realize, oh my, it's a
that took me a long time.
It's a just right disease.
So stubborn.
It's a just right disease, where it's like, I got to make sure these things are just right or I'm not going to feel.
Okay. So let me ask it in a different way. Okay. Relationship wise.
Well, as a pastor at a young age, I hid behind that role.
So, okay. That's what okay.
So if I'm in a social setting, I'm going to be there in that role, and then I'm going to get out of there. When it gets like, and that's easy to do. I'm busy. I got another church service, and we had like,
It's so funny because like you were breaking out of so many things when I met you, but it's funny even you saying that right now. It's like, what mark was that?
Right. I'm still asking myself that.
Now,
too.
we're not saying we've arrived in anything, but it's been, it's interesting to look back at those times.
So I'm in my mid 40s now. So that's, a good, I do math for a second. That's a good 25 to 30 years ago.
Yep.
That it took awareness. And I would say probably in the past 5 years, I've become more acutely aware of how much that season affected my life, how ill prepared I was for it. And I was just thrown into a lion's den with nothing in my hands.
Right. And in a church that was performance driven.
Which most are. Right.
Right. But
Yeah. And I'm not saying that to be like critical
just
either.
Is what it is.
It's just right. Where we're culturally performance driven.
They say they're not. Okay. Let me break something down for you people. Okay.
Right.
Most churches, no, not most churches, but some churches will say they're not. They're all about the heart and this and that.
Yeah.
Okay. At the end of the day, they're still running a business. We love the church people, but
and again, it's not a
No, we're trying to stir the pot and waken how we can do this different and more relational.
Yeah.
So we poke the bear sometimes.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. I lost my train of thought for a second.
Sorry.
But the past few years, I feel like I've become more aware of that time period. I don't have any references for fathering. I don't have any references. So now when I look back and I go, okay, in my mid-20s, the anxiety, the neurotic pathways of thinking, my early to mid-20s, it makes sense to me now. Whereas
many times did you have people just, you got to stop doing that? Did you have people say that to you, or did you have more religious stuff? For me, it was just because I didn't really go to my family. So it was just stop doing that.
I don't even think I had that. Yeah.
Really? Yours was yours though, like just pray?
It wasn't until the relationship OCD was so intense, I then started sharing with people. Like and the neurotic tendencies would come out. And people would be like, "Oh, you just need to relax. Just relax and enjoy, going out for dinner and enjoy getting to know people."
Isn't that the best?
And I was
that's excellent.
And I was
just relax, just chill.
Yeah, and I'd go
Meanwhile, your head is like,
but
what am I gonna do?
But what if I'm out of God's will?
Mm-hmm. What if I'm going to burn in hell if I go on a date?
Correct. What if this anxiety means something? What if I'm so that's up until then, I never shared the anxiety with anybody. I'd have debilitating panic attacks before.
Here's the thing though. Did you know that's what it was? I don't think a lot of people would even know they're like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew they were anxiety. Like I had a lot of anxiety.
I did not. I was very emotionally dumb. I did not know I was having like anxiety attacks. I just thought I was a mental case.
Maybe
I was a mental case. Well,
you just condemned yourself a lot.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And what we want to do is keep people from condemning themselves over their battles. I think that I was aware that it was anxiety, but I had no idea what to do about it. I even taught sermons. Like I look back, I have I have my sermon collections all the way back to like, some of the first ones I ever gave. And I could look back and I'm like, look at me talking about anxiety, and I was chock full of it, but I was talking about it almost like I didn't battle it.
Right.
You can like disconnect yourself. And that was a change in my life, was like, I'm no longer going to like preach from like, I want to give this message. It was like, I want to take what God is doing in my life and let that be the message. And so no more of this like coming up with something, more of like, I want to just let what's happening in my life. But that was the shift of me being okay with vulnerability. And I realized me telling other people, hey, I got these wounds and stuff I'm working through. I wasn't prepared for how uncomfortable everyone else was.
Oh my gosh, this just made me think of this. I'll tell this quick story. So I'm in my 20s and I'm a mess. On the outside, everything looked great. I had a good job, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, I got to pull it together. I don't know how to have relationships, friendships, whatever.
Yeah.
I got to go to a counselor. So I find this like sweet old man. And this is when I was in Connecticut. I'll never forget. He was in West Hartford, and I even couldn't remember the building. So I go in and I tell him in my language at the time, like, I just can't pull it together kind of thing. And he looks at me and he goes, I don't understand. I mean, you're good looking. You got a good family.
Oh, no.
Just, be confident in your decision making. That's what he said to me. Did not.
Just get over
it.
Just get over it.
That did not help me. Then again, it was, well, it's you. You're the problem.
Right. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people have that kind of experience where they're not. I had that my own in certain counselors too, like walk out of there going, I don't have one thought that I'm even like taking away from this. And I felt more confused. So it's understandable if you find yourself in that journey.
Right.
Too.
So it's like, not only do we not have good fathers equipping people, we have people who should be equipping people who are men. They're not doing it anyways.
Yeah. So it to kind of land this plane.
Sorry.
I think
we took some tangents.
Well, I think it's like learning to be loved by your father changes, it shifts things. Cause it's like, okay, I'm not going to I'm going to like this performer in me needs, like, I need to be able to learn what it means to be loved right where I am. I need to know what it means to be loved by my Father in heaven right where I am. And so much of our material gets into some of the works and things that you can cover. One of the things I would recommend is the resource Experiencing God's Love as Your Father. And I did my best to make it concise. It's actually a short read. It's not very long, but it's got a lot of questions and things to help you navigate that. And if you find it to be helpful in any way, take a deep dive into exposing the rejection mindset. This, in fact, we have a second edition out that just has some enhanced insights and things, and that want to encourage your journey in understanding where the Father doesn't do his work in our life. And I talk about your earthly fathers. Rejection takes that place. It will cause you to live in spiritual slavery, to be a performer, to try to please God. You're always doing and trying to do, and you're stuck in the performance living kind of trap. And this resource is going to help you to navigate a new way of seeing things so that you can begin a healing process in your life and in your journey. But I pray that what we talked about today will give you some questions that you can begin thinking about and kind of just allow them to move you. And if it doesn't land, it doesn't land. Kind of like pay attention to what sticks.
I was just going to say, pay attention to kind of what comes up, and even
That's
if
right.
You're with your father or with siblings and you see, pay attention to those little things.
Yeah. And you can go back to our discussion on what not to do with family to help, because we're not saying go to your dad and share him all the things that he did, because that's not where healing begins anyway.
No.
So that's not where it is. It's you and God and obviously some helpful people that can help you talk through these things. But navigating the renewal that way. And some of you realize, man, I need some reparenting. That's where we're all at. So welcome to the family. But anyway, if this resource has been a blessing to your life and your journey, go to markdejesus.com, click on the donate button. You can do a one-time donation or become a regular supporter. We also have topics. You can click on our topics section. It goes to the resource library where you can go into further areas that are accurate to what you're going through and what you're learning. There's books, there's courses, and all in all, we just want to be a blessing to your life and your journey. So We pray that this has blessed you, blessed where you're at, and encourages you. And so, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.
Thank you.
We'll be back next time. Love you guys. But until then, we're out.